The drama that surrounds NBA player Kyrie Irving continues to grow. The Brooklyn Nets now have decided to suspend him for 5 games now without pay over his promotion of an anti-Semitic book and documentary over his refusal to apologize, explain, talk about it in any kind of meaningful way. So let's get into what this was first before we get into these punishments. Last week, Irving posted a link on Twitter to the film Hebrews to Negroes, Wake Up Black America, which is driven by anti-Semitic tropes about Jewish people lying about their origins. Its false and outlandish claims about Jews include the assertion that the Holocaust never happened. There's lots in this, but that's not the only thing. The synopsis on Amazon said that the film uncovers the true identity of the children of Israel. Here's an image of a promo, I guess a flyer for that documentary there. Correct. The book version includes a large list of industries from banking to book publishing that European Jews allegedly dominate, before stating, using control of our money and the mass media, the European Jews gained control of our thinking. Elsewhere, the book refers to the quote, Jewish-controlled news media. A bunch of things you never heard of before, I'm sure. None of those things have ever been mentioned before. I mean, this is brand new stuff. Kyrie is teaching everyone about it though. But last night, the Nets said in their statement when they were suspending Kyrie, by the way, this has been a week long of this kind of drama before they finally suspended him. This is what they said. We're dismayed today when given an opportunity in a media session that Kyrie refused to unequivocally say he has had no anti-Semitic beliefs nor acknowledged specific hateful material in the film. This was not the first time he had the opportunity, but failed to clarify. It continued, such failure to disavow anti-Semitism when given a clear opportunity to do so is deeply disturbing, is against the values of our organization, and constitutes conduct detrimental to the team. And accordingly, we are of the view that he is currently unfit to be associated with the Brooklyn Nets. That sounds like he's on his way out. Now people are questioning whether or not this is the beginning of the end for Kyrie and after these 5 games, and especially since, which I also read from Wojnarowski over on ESPN, he said this entire week of this drama, the ownership and the general manager have been trying to reach out to Kyrie, and any kind of communication we've talked about, from their connections to the ADL and talking about ways to rectify this, was all done through proxy people, not directly with Kyrie. He was not responding to folks within the organization. So after all this did happen, and after suspension came down with no pay, he committed $500,000 to some groups to help fight against hate. All these things to push back, but not an apology or an explanation. He then finally had this over on Instagram. He says, I take responsibility for posting that. Some things that were questionable in there, untrue. Like I said in the first time when you guys were asking me, when I was sitting on that stage, I don't believe everything that everybody posts. It's a documentary, so I take my responsibility. I'm sorry, this is before he apologized. This is him trying to, I guess, smooth things over. So he continued, asked directly if he's had any anti-Semitic beliefs. Irving said, again, I'm going to repeat, I don't know how the label becomes justified, because you guys ask me the same questions over and over and over again, but this is not going to turn into a spin around cycle, questions upon questions. I told you guys how I felt. I respect all walks of life and embrace all walks of life. That's where I sit. That was the answer to the question. So Kyrie, can you say that you're not anti-Semite? That was his answer. Now this is his actual apology over on Instagram after he's been suspended. To all Jewish families and communities that are hurt and affected from my post, I am deeply sorry to have caused you pain, and I apologize. I initially reacted out of emotion to being unjustly labeled anti-Semitic, instead of focusing on the healing process of my Jewish brothers and sisters that were hurt from the hateful remarks made in the documentary. And lastly here, Cenk, I want to clarify any confusion on where I stand fighting against anti-Semitism by apologizing for posting the documentary without context and a factual explanation outlining the specific beliefs in the documentary I agreed with and disagreed with. I had no intentions to disrespect any Jewish cultural history regarding the Holocaust or perpetuate any hate. I'm a seeker of truth and knowledge, and I know who I am.
Yeah, I don't believe him at all. I don't think he wrote that. I think his publicist wrote it. I don't think he believes a word of it. And was it because of the suspension? Of course! Okay, so he's about to lose a ton of money and it was an unpaid suspension, but that's not the main reason why he did it. The main reason why he did it is because people started asking Nike, hey, you gonna keep this guy as one of your top athletes? You're gonna pay him millions of dollars? So, and remember, Adidas pulled the giant deal with Kanye West. So when Kyrie all of a sudden realized, oh, nobody might let me play basketball, I might not be able to make any more money, and they're gonna pull my Nike deal. Well, okay, yeah, sure. write up something that I don't mean at all and put it out in the press. No, apology not accepted. Now, I don't speak for Jews, I'm not even Jewish, okay? And so everybody can make their own decision that they want. Okay, but Kyrie Irving has a very consistent pattern. They like to call it independent thinker, right? So that all the independent thinkers somehow, though, wind up with the same hateful ideology. They're so independent. And they all wind up following some rando on Facebook, right? They're like, I don't believe 99% of the world's scientists. I believe Bob on Facebook. I'm not taking vaccines. Bob told me. I'm an independent thinker, okay? And do Jews run the media? That's a preposterous thing to say, okay? Look, I'll get back to that in a second. He's like, but most people say, and the facts say, that they don't. But Bob on Facebook here has a documentary, and I'm throwing Facebook under the bus here, but in this case it's Amazon, okay? And so I, as an independent thinker, came to the same conclusion: anti-vax, anti-Semite, anti-anything, okay? No, you're not an independent thinker. I have a much simpler explanation. You're a dumbass. And you're not supposed to say that. Oh, no, Kanye's a genius, and Kyrie, well, I mean, he could have his own independent opinion. Yeah, he does have his own independent opinion, the opinion of a dumbass. So now let me just say real quick on who owns the media and controls the media. I worked at MSNBC, one of the largest cable news stations. I had their 6 o'clock hour. That's a very important primetime hour. You know who my bosses were? Irish dudes. And above them were Irish dudes. Okay, so, and then by the way, I had a falling out with them. And I turned down like a 7-figure deal, etc. And if I was Kyrie or Kanye or whatever, I'd been like, they refuse to call me a visionary. You know what? It's the Irish media mafia. Or no, it's that random dude. And he might be Christian, he might be Jewish, he might be Irish, he might be Turkish. Oh, right, who runs the TYT network? The largest digital network. Oh, I do. And I Muslim by background, okay? So what happened? Oh, the Jews run everything. No, they don't, It's just not true. Can you find 1 or 2 Jewish people who have found success? Yeah, of course you can. But you can find just as many Irish guys who have found success. And the list goes on and on of all the different races, religions, and stuff. And guys, I've been at the very top of the different media circles, and I'm here to tell you, the room is filled with Christian white males. But at the same time, that doesn't mean, the goddamn Christian white males. No, it just means that's how history and facts just got into a situation where in this country, that's who runs it, right? You know who runs the media in, let's say, Saudi Arabia? The Muslim media mafia, because it's predominantly Muslim country. So Muslims own the media, and here predominantly Christians do. It's not evil of Christians, it's not nefarious of Christians, but it certainly isn't the Jews, and none of this crap is true. And as a Muslim, by the way, all the way back to the 1980s and 90s, because this stuff's now starting to connect to Farrakhan, and it was only a matter of time before it would. I went, when I used to believe in Islam, and I listened to Farrakhan, and he gave this speech, and the first half of the speech was actually amazing. So I'm always honest about it, right? So I listened, and he's all about black empowerment, and the way that he explained it made a ton of sense. And I was like, oh, hey, maybe people were unfair to Farrakhan. Then he goes to the second half of the speech, and he's like, the goddamn Jews. I was like, no, they were not at all unfair to him. He says it, he said it 1 billion times. You know why? Because he's also a dumbass. Okay, that's my take. Avi, what do you think?
No, I just think, if you want to be a free thinker, that's fine. But remember that you are representing an organization ultimately, and there are people who look up to you in your opinion. And I think maybe that's where Kyrie is missing the mark, right? So he didn't communicate with anyone about apologizing. He made everything go through his agent, which kind of shows where he was emotionally with this, if he really is apologetic. He had multiple opportunities to say verbally, I apologize, I'm sorry. That's what people were looking for. But he took his time to not do that until after he got reprimanded for it. And so I think that is a larger scale issue, because now you build this media frenzy around these thought people, right? People who are free thinkers, who are going to buy into this conspiracy even larger and say, see, that's what happens when you speak out or you hold your own or whatever the case may be. And the reality is, no, your comments were just irresponsible. Sharing that a post was irresponsible. It has now made so much money on Amazon. I believe it's like one of the #1 selling movies on Amazon right now. And it's all around this energy that you have created. And it's really bad timing when you think about the fact that we are in the middle of midterms, right? Right around the corner. And all we need is to rile up this base who really believes in these type of things. So I just think it was irresponsible 100%. And that's what you get. Enjoy your time off.
Sure, your time
by the way,
off.
I don't even like apologies. Apologies that need to have some understanding as to why you have to apologize. For him just come on, even if it was 6 days ago, oh, I'm sorry. Who cares? I don't care. Do you understand what it is that happened and how this affects other people? And in fact, the reasons why so many people were upset. Because he thinks people are upset at him because they're looking just push back on his high intellect. And the fact that he researches and knows all this stuff. He was offended someone was challenging him on the things that he believed and didn't want to have to give any room. That's what a lot of people in this country do. So it's contrarianism gone wrong. It's to the wall contrarianism. And until someone actually gets to that point of forcing it to happen, he wasn't willing to do so. And by the way, why is it still up on Amazon? Because look who's making money off of that.
Yeah, by the way, I mean, we should also be protesting Bezos. It's true. Because I have heard people in my life saying like, oh no, it's an Amazon movie. Not about that movie, but about other movies that were wacky. They're like, no, it's an Amazon movie. No, it's not an Amazon movie. It just happens to be on Amazon. But Amazon, you also got to regulate yourself, right? And guys, so sometimes people say, well, you know, this is not, this shows that the Jews are very powerful because when you say terrible things about them, there's consequences. So, and they let people say terrible things about other people. Well, they didn't let anybody say anything. But should we all push back against all forms of racism, bigotry, etc.? Of course. It does. When you point out anti-Semitism, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't also point out racism and bigotry. And for example, and by the way, when Trump wanted to ban all Muslims from the country, corporate media didn't care at all. They said, mainstream media was like, oh, okay, 50-50, I can't tell. Should we ban all Muslims or should we not? I wouldn't want to offend any Republicans. Well, how about them offending us, saying we should be banned because of who we are? But they didn't give a damn about that. But you could point that out as well as pointing out the anti-Semitism. And by the way, you know who helped most when Muslims were attacked? The Anti-Defamation League. So that's a Jewish organization that said not on our watch. So if you're real brothers and sisters here in America, you fight for one another, not against one another. So I'll believe Kyrie Irving is genuine if he actually shows anything. And guys, if you claim to be an independent thinker, you got to actually come with facts. So you say, hey, I'm an independent thinker, like we say here. We're against corporate media, and we come with facts. We say, hey, they don't talk about the corruption. Here's $1 billion in campaign contributions, and we think the $1 billion might affect the politicians, right? That's a fact. That's an interesting fact, and you can make up your own mind. Corporate media says, no. They don't care about bribery. The politicians are so honest and wonderful, right? Okay, then you can make up your mind. But Kyrie Irving comes in with, yeah, all the doctors, they say it, but again, Bob and my neighbor are against it. I'm an independent thinker. Are you? Because you didn't bring any goddamn facts at all. And the same thing here, of course, there are no facts here. They never have any facts. It's just hatred. How's this for a revolutionary idea? We stand up against hatred in all its forms.
Crazy.
Wow.
Oddly, Cenk, last thing here is what we did discover, and maybe other people just not figured out. You know who runs the media is corporations.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Now there's an independent thinker. Okay.
Just them.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.